Ethan Cole had driven that winding Arizona highway countless times, but on that quiet desert evening it felt unusually still. The sky burned orange, the sun melting into the distant mesas, and the wind carried only the soft hiss of sand brushing the roadside. Ethan, billionaire ranch owner yet a simple man at heart, was returning from a charity event in Phoenix when a small, motionless shape caught his eye. At first he thought it was an animal, maybe a coyote pup. But the moment he slowed down and stepped out of his truck, he realized the truth was far more heartbreaking. Lying in the dust was a young Apache boy, skin pale with exhaustion, clothes torn, and tiny hands trembling as if struggling to hold on to consciousness. Ethan dropped to one knee instantly, every protective instinct inside him firing at once. The child's breathing was shallow, his lips cracked from thirst. Ethan gently lifted him, feeling how unbearably light he was, like a bundle of bones wrapped in dust and fear. Without hesitating, Ethan wrapped his coat around the boy and rushed him into the passenger seat, whispering reassurances the child was too weak to truly hear. The drive back to his ranch cabin felt longer than usual. Ethan kept glancing at the boy, terrified he might stop breathing before they arrived. When they reached the cabin, a quiet wooden home tucked between red cliffs and open sky, Ethan carried the boy inside, placing him near the fire. He heated water, prepared warm soup, and used gentle cloths to clean the boy's face. Hours passed with Ethan checking his pulse, encouraging him to drink, and making sure he was warm enough to keep his fragile body from shutting down entirely. By morning, the boy finally opened his eyes, though only slightly. He barely spoke and seemed afraid to trust, watching Ethan carefully as though deciding if he was a danger or a blessing. Ethan moved slowly, respectfully, giving him space. When he tried asking the child simple questions, his name, his home, if he was hurt, the boy only whispered one word, soft and trembling through cracked lips: home. It wasn't much, but it was something. Ethan knew the child belonged to someone, somewhere, and somewhere out there someone must be desperately searching for him. Over the next 4 days, Ethan devoted himself completely to the boy's care. He cooked warm meals, kept a fire going through the cold desert nights, and made sure the boy rested safely. Little by little, the child began to trust him, leaning against him when tired, accepting food without fear, and sleeping peacefully near the fire. Still, the boy rarely spoke, always repeating that same haunting word whenever Ethan tried to understand more: home. Ethan wondered what he had escaped from, or what he had lost. Something about the boy's silence felt like a storm waiting quietly on the horizon. Ethan had rescued animals before, even helped hikers lost in the desert, but this felt different. The boy wasn't simply lost, he carried fear in his eyes that didn't belong to a child. Ethan felt responsible, though he didn't know why. Every night, after the boy had fallen asleep, Ethan sat awake trying to piece together clues: clothing style, markings, the child's Apache features, and wondered how far he had walked, how he ended up alone, and who was missing him. He didn't know it yet, but his questions were about to be answered in a way he never expected. Because on the fourth morning, as the sun spilled gold across the desert sand, a heavy, deliberate knock echoed through Ethan's wooden cabin. A knock that didn't sound lost or uncertain, but determined. Ethan froze, a strange tension rising in his chest. Whoever stood on the other side of that door hadn't come by accident. And in the silence before he reached for the doorknob, Ethan realized the storm he had sensed was no longer approaching. It had arrived. The fourth morning began like any other, with sunlight spreading over the desert and slipping quietly into Ethan's wooden cabin. He moved around the kitchen, preparing a simple breakfast while the boy still slept near the warmth of the fire. The peaceful silence felt almost fragile, as if the cabin were holding its breath. Then, 3 sharp knocks echoed through the wooden door. They weren't hesitant or accidental. They were firm, deliberate, and filled with purpose. Ethan paused mid-step, a strange tension curling through his chest. Something outside was waiting. Something he hadn't prepared for. When Ethan opened the door, the morning sun poured in behind the visitors, casting long shadows across his porch. Standing there were 3 Apache women, dressed in traditional clothing that carried the weight of history and identity. The eldest, a woman with braids streaked in silver and eyes deep with worry, seemed to lead the group. Behind her stood 2 younger women, gripping woven shawls tightly around their shoulders. Their expressions blended fear, relief, suspicion, and determination, Emotions layered so clearly that Ethan understood instantly. These were women searching for someone precious. Ethan's heart pounded as they stared at him. He had expected someone might come looking for the boy, but he had never imagined an arrival like this, powerful, silent, and filled with unspoken judgment. The eldest woman stepped forward, her voice trembling but strong enough to cut through the air between them. "We were told a white rancher saved our child," she said, each word heavy with meaning. "We have come for him." Her voice carried both gratitude and caution, as if she needed to protect her people even while seeking help. Ethan felt the weight of her expectation settle on his shoulders. Behind him, he sensed movement. When he glanced back, the small Apache boy peeked around the corner of the doorway, eyes wide, shining with recognition and emotion Ethan had never seen in him before. The boy's quiet presence shifted the energy instantly. The women gasped softly, their tense posture melting for a moment as one of the younger women lifted a hand to her mouth. Relief washed over their faces, but so did something else, pain, maybe, or the memory of fear. Ethan realized how much this child meant to them, how desperately they must have been searching. The eldest woman stepped closer and knelt, opening her arms gently. The boy hesitated, then shuffled forward, clinging to her clothing as tears finally rolled down his cheeks. The women gathered around him protectively, whispering in soft Apache tones Ethan couldn't understand but felt deeply. Watching them, Ethan realized the boy's silence over the last days wasn't simply fear, it was trauma. He was lost, unsure if he would ever be found again. And now, in the safety of his family, the child's rigid posture softened for the first time since Ethan had rescued him from the roadside. As Ethan stood in the doorway, the gravity of the moment anchored him. He had thought he was simply helping a lost child survive a few cold desert nights. But this reunion, this emotional storm, this fragile relief, showed him that he had stepped into something far larger than himself. The eldest woman finally looked up at him, gratitude swimming in her eyes. But there was also something questioning there, something that hinted their story wasn't finished. And Ethan, feeling the weight of her gaze, understood that this was only the beginning of a journey he never expected to take.